Right, here we are then. Right, here we are then. Hello, Nick, and anybody else who's out there who's joining me for this bit of a sort of reflection and thought about the hello, and anybody else who's out there who's joining me for this bit of a sort of reflection and thought about Jadviga. Nice to see you. Hello. Now then, let me. Jadviga, nice to see you. Now, what I've got to do is to turn the sound off. There we are. There. Sorry, this is the first time I've done a live broadcast. Hello, Zandy. Nice to have you here. This is my first live broadcast using Facebook, so I don't know quite what I'm doing really. So this could be quite amusing for everybody else. I was just trying to cancel out the feedback of sound because I've got it running through another program and then watching what's coming up live so I can see your questions. So if you can't hear something or something could be improved, just make me a note and I'll see what I can do. So, a number of my students have asked me very recently about what they should charge if they are going to do an icon commission. And this is quite an important area and something I've got quite a bit of, I suppose, passion about really as a professional iconographer. About the sorts of things people should be thinking about. Hi, Kimmy. Hi. Sorry, just seen you pop up there. So I thought rather than just sort of talking to one person and another person, it might be an idea to get people together who might be interested and trying to share a few ideas about what sort of things I think about, and then an opportunity for those of you to ask questions who are thinking about it. So I've got a few little thoughts here. I think the first thing to say is iconography is a vocation. And so that's just something you do because it's what's on your heart that God is asking of you. So that means this is more like when you're a nun, a priest, somebody working for the church. It's not a commercial undertaking. It's not, I need to make money, I need to have a job, okay, I'll do icon painting. It's more that as you paint icons and begin to deepen your awareness of what you're doing, it seizes you that this is something that you've got to give your life to. And out of that, you then have a problem, because if you spend a lot of time on painting icons, then you're not going to have any time to go and work. So this then really begins to impact on your life. And it's quite interesting. Some of my students have been sort of saying, oh, you know, I realise I've got to spend a lot more time on this, but that's going to have implications for other things. People who are married and have families, people who are solitary religious, for example, and having to support themselves in their vocation. You have to eat and drink. You've got to have a place to live. You've got to have clothes. You've got to have a life. So how do you balance all of that? So it's really good that people are beginning to feel that sort of pressure. So that's one stream of the people who've been approaching me with these questions. And then another stream are people who have been painting icons for maybe some time, or are artists in some professional capacity. So they might be landscape painters or portrait painters or so on. And because they're an artist and people know that they paint icons, then people approach people and say, oh, could you paint me an icon? I'd really like one. And then you've got this whole thing, well, what should I charge? And how do you evaluate all of that? So there are two sort of almost excluding approaches. One is, it's my vocation. How do I shape this? And the other is, I'm an artist, or I've put a lot of time into painting icons. People know that I paint. So they've asked me if I can paint an icon for them. So if that's what's happening, that's a very different sort of ball game. So two different things there. But at the end of the day, it comes down to some hard questions about living. What life costs, what sort of lifestyle I'm expecting, what's the right balance between looking after my family, for example. What sort of standard of living do you want to provide for your children? And is iconography going to enable you to do that? It's a really big question. Now, being an artist is usually something that leaves people poor. So, in general, that's the case. Most artists spend most of their life struggling. And maybe they have a husband or wife, a spouse or whatever, who will help them. So that is a sort of quite a nice position to be in, really, because you can relax a bit. It's adding to the family income, but you're not the main wage earner. So again, another dynamic to somebody who, they're the main breadwinner, and they need to support their family from their income. Now, the reason why I'm beginning by sort of sketching out this range of situations is because I think the first thing that I'd want to say, apart from the opportunity, is solidarity. As Christians, we are supposed to be committed to the common good. It's not just about me, what's necessary for me and my life and my little corner of the world. It's about us, the body of Christ. And as iconographers, we really are at the forefront of the church's identity in that way. It's formal Christian art, and therefore the rules of Christ for sure apply. It's not a sort of grey area. It's straight up there. So these questions are really important, and the issue of solidarity isn't something we can just sort of poo-poo. So it's not just about me, it's about other iconographers, and it's also about being part of a global community. Those of you who are on the Academy course with me know that we've got people from Australia and America, from Pakistan, from Palestine, and so forth. And, there is a range of needs in that. If you live in the United Kingdom, the level of income you need just to pay basic rent is going to be really different to somebody living in, say, Bethlehem. Just different societies, different parts of the world have a different economic context. Because of the internet, because we now live in this global village, you can't just say, oh, well, that's their problem. We're all in this together, and as iconographers, what I charge has to somehow sit within the context of the international community of iconographers that I belong to. And this is all to say it's actually not easy to get this right. And there are a lot of different approaches to this question. So the first thing before I sort of say what I think is to say that I am aware that this is a very, very complex question. And in a way, there is no right answer. It's something that each of us has to think through in our situation. And that can sometimes be a little painful. And there can be disagreements between iconographers about what's right or not. So one of the things to bear in mind is it's worth talking to others about it. So here we have this little opportunity now where if you want to make any comments, challenge anything I'm saying, affirm anything I'm saying, share an experience, please do put them in the comments. And I'll try to refer to what you say as I go on. But I really hope that this begins a conversation among certainly my students and others who are interested. If you're having to deal with money, the other thing that can make that conversation difficult is feeling embarrassed. We don't want to seem greedy, but at the same time we can get really quite edgy when we think we're being taken advantage of. And when it comes down to those of us who are professionals having to live from our work, some things can get a little tricky. So, for example, I'm a professional iconographer. I have spent years in my craft and invested time and money to reach a certain level. When I paint, I live from what I do, and therefore I need to be able to charge a certain amount of money just to cover the costs of the boards, the paints, etc., but then also of my time. If somebody who doesn't have to live from their work and it's more of a hobby is offering to paint icons very cheaply, then I think it's very important that people are honest to those who are asking for their commissions and that they give the background to why it's costing what it's costing. And that's one, to be honest about the level of work. I mean, to be fair, somebody might be an amateur and be brilliant. But in my experience, if you're not able to invest a lot of time in your work, then the levels never quite push through a certain barrier. A lot of people have done a course here or there and are quite ready to start selling icons because their friends saying, "Oh, I'd like to buy one," and "Oh, what can I?" And then Father at church. Now this is where it gets a real pain, especially in non-orthodox contexts, where people don't necessarily understand icons. They like them, they have a feeling for them, but they don't know what makes a good icon. They know they look a bit odd, but they don't really understand what makes for a really good icon. And unfortunately, I've gone around churches in England and seen really quite poor quality work in the church. Now, what we offer to God should always be our best as an individual, but as a community, in the place where we celebrate the liturgy, it should be of the highest standard. And if that means the parish has to save up and do fundraising to get good quality iconography, then so be it. If, as a parishioner, you're approached and you know that your standard is okay, but it's not really the right sort of quality for in a church, then I think it's important that you help the priest to understand what it is he's asking for, and to make sure that he understands what it is that you'd be producing for him, and therefore the rate that you're charging. That, I think, is quite important. So it may be that Father says, no, we want you to do it. You're a parishioner. We know you, and this adds something for our community, which is really important. Fine, as long as you've presented the reality, I think that's a fair enough conversation. But that sense of solidarity is I think, important. Not getting any comments from anybody, so it would be really helpful if you had some thoughts. If you've been in a similar situation, I mean, you can sort of type them in. It would just help to my train of thought, and to know that I'm actually saying something which is of relevance to you and makes sense. If you're thinking of becoming a professional iconographer and you're approached by your parish priest and you're on the way, you know it's what you want to do as your vocation, and you begin to find that people have an interest in your work, that's wonderful. And I would take that as a sign of grace, that the Holy Spirit is supporting and nurturing you. But again, be honest about where you are in your own training. And if you're not sure, ask your teacher. And if you don't have a teacher and you're just sort of teaching yourself, then go find a teacher, because it's a skill that needs to be passed on, and it's a skill that needs to be learned. And unfortunately, over the previous 150 years, a lot of iconography skills were lost, and so that a number of people were self-taught, and only now is there a sort of building up again of the wisdom of the tradition. And there's some really fantastic work being done by some really wonderful master iconographers. Refer to them, share their wisdom, study at their feet, learn from them, because that's part of your responsibility as an iconographer, to ensure that your work is as good as it can be and that it's informed. So if you're receiving that, the quality of what you pass on is going to be really good. If you know you've not done that, then again, you've got to sort of be honest, I think, with potential clients about what it is that you're able to offer. When you're beginning the movement from it's my interest to it's going to be my work, then it can get very expensive. You've got materials to buy which are not cheap if you're buying boards, for example. You've got your gold leaf and so forth. You've got your the bowl, the pigments, etc. So and at the beginning you're investing in tools. So sooner or later you need to buy burnishers. You need to get your gilding kit. You need to get some really good brushes to enable your work just to push up another notch, and so on. So at the beginning you're going to have maximum expense, and you're also going to be slow. because you're learning as you're working. So that means if you're trying to live from your work, you're going to end up charging more out of need than somebody who's more experienced and can, do an icon very, very rapidly. Not because they're rushing it, but because they really know what they're doing and it just flows. So there's a paradox there that the neophyte iconographer is the one who really needs the resources, the financial support, and therefore needs to charge a quite decent fee. But actually, the quality of the work that he can offer or she can offer is low, or lower than it will be when they progress. So again, another thing you've got to try and balance when you're asking for commissions or whatever. So that period can be really, really tricky, because you don't want to be robbing your clients. So you're taking the same amount of money for your work as I would be, or say someone like Aidan Hart or Peter Murphy might be, with all the experience and expertise and stuff that they bring. And passing your work off as the same value, as it were, as these master iconographers' work, is a little dishonest. So that's something else you've got to sort of bear in mind. I'm trying to share with you the complexities of trying to understand what it is you've got to charge. Basically, because there is no one standard. There is not the price that you get for this, and this. It stands as it stands. Now, somebody's asked a question. Let's have a look. Hubert asks, Ian, once I know I'm capable to paint an icon that true to the tradition, that I've got some experience in, then I would consider to take on a commission. But if a request for an icon is more than what I am capable of, I would be hesitant. Maybe elaborate on this. Okay, yep. So I would say if you've got humility, then you need to be pushed to jump, to take some risks, to allow the Holy Spirit to provide opportunities and have the courage to take them. I'd much rather somebody errs on the side of humility than overconfidence. So it's more healthy for the whole process. But you've got to be careful that you don't sort of get cramped by a sort of scrupulosity. And if somebody asks you for a commission, then I would say, great. As long as you're basically competent and you're going to be able to produce something that's decent enough. If it's going to really stretch you, then go and get help. You don't have to paint on your own. When I started out, my first several years of commissions, I went back to my teacher, Aidan, and got him to critique every single piece of work that I did. Every single piece of work. And I know other people who do that, and they pay their teacher for the time for the critique. So, like, for example, I've got the opportunity for my students who want an email critique or a one-on-one tutorial. If you're doing an icon, then part of what your growth in iconography, when you're pushing yourself, is to be able to go to the right teacher to get the help to enable you to develop. And the fact that they're going to pay you something for when you're studying means your quid's in, because this is developing your skill set. And instead of having to just study for nothing, you've actually got somebody willing to pay for that. As long as you don't put yourself in a position of false pretenses and you're honest with your client, look, I'm a beginner. I'm going to need the help of my teacher, and I need to go past this by him or her to see whether she thinks this is a sensible thing for me to do at this stage. Because I don't feel I can do this just on my own. I think if you're honest like that, the lovely thing is that you develop a relationship with your client, and it becomes a journey together, and a source of blessing for you and them. So humility, honesty, transparency, and a willingness to allow the Holy Spirit to really shape the journey, I think is really important there. So I hope that I don't know if that answers some question, and if anybody else is sort of following this, whether that rings true with you. There were quite a few little lights going up, so I assumed that was okay. So then I think another element of this is, if you're getting commissions and you live in England and your commissions are in England and you can charge a good price, then that's, you can say, well, I can charge this money and it can be great. But I think also be aware that what am I going to say? Yeah, if you're somebody in, say, Romania, and you're offering your icons for sale in America, and you can undercut the prices that Americans will pay because your the standard of the cost of living in Romania is a lot lower than it is for people in the United States. That can be a little bit of a sensitive area, because if you really want to develop iconography in each culture, then people need to be able to support themselves, which means being able to charge a reasonable price. And if you're not careful, it creates the impression that the natives, say in America or England, whatever, are being greedy. So it is difficult because it's a wonderful way of getting ahead. You can sell your work internationally and so forth. But I'll show you a story from Bethlehem. The local Greek Orthodox clergy were all from Greece, not from Palestine. There was a local iconographer who was really good, Johnny Antonio, and he was really a very fine, accomplished iconographer. But the local clergy didn't value his work. He wasn't Greek, so therefore he couldn't be a real first-class iconographer. So they would give him a lot less money for the same work. So, for example, he told me there's one case where an Orthodox parish in the Holy Land wanted the Last Judgment. So he came up with a proposal, a design, and I think he wanted like $13,000 for this. In the end, they went with a Greek iconographer from Greece who charged 30,000 euros, and it was just a figure of the Archangel Michael. So you can see how the commissioning of an icon, even in an Orthodox context, is going to be influenced by all sorts of very worldly considerations. And you as an iconographer mustn't be naive about what we as a community face and the part we can all play in educating those who are commissioning icons to understand the ethical elements that are involved here. So there's all these little areas which I think are well worth bearing in mind when you're accepting commissions or you're looking for commissions, because one of the things is, once you decide you are going to go full time, you need to advertise. You need to have your website. You need to have a business head, because this is your bread and butter, and you need to pay taxes on what you're earning, and you need to keep records and so forth. It's not just sitting in a hut on a mountainside painting, under the guidance of the Holy Spirit and clouds of glory. It's a very humble work. It's literally taking mud, as we know, and slapping it onto a board with a certain skill to tell the glory of God. So let's not put ourselves on some big highfalutin, thing. We're craftsmen. We're craftspeople. We're people who work with our hands, and that's who we are. We are not Michelangelo or Theophanes the Greek. We are just ordinary people, trying to do extraordinary things as well as we can. So we need to keep that in the mix. Now, a couple of thoughts have come up. From Father Justin. Hi Ian, can you share some thoughts on mass-produced icons, such as what we get from the sisters in Minsk, which, although they are good icons, they are sold for prices we simply can't charge because they are too low? How do we deal with this? A very, 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 very good point. And this really illustrates how, I think if we've got a sense of a international community, how we can really sort of undermine or affirm each other by taking a little bit of a sort of hit, as it were, for ourselves. Having said that, one of the problems that a layperson faces compared to a priest or a religious or a non-orthodox with an orthodox is that we get graded as to our value added. So if I'm an Orthodox archbishop who paints icons, then I'm going to be in lots of people's eyesights, and so you've got all sorts of avenues to explore. The nuns in Minsk, who produce some good icons, as you say, but they are in this sort of factory production. They already have an added extra because they're nuns, and so that's sort of seen as sort of real iconographers. They're orthodox, real iconographers, and the fact that they're sort of mass-produced, as it were, even if by hand, is going to be of less significance to some people. I think the way I handle this is to, first of all, trust to divine providence. Each of us has to have confidence that God has called us to this work because there is something that we bring that's special, and that will be part of what we hand over to him for him to use as he wills. So I think one of the things is, smile, shrug, and say, but this is what you get. I do it this way. As it were, the value added of what I bring is, and don't be ashamed or afraid to say what your value added is. Not because you're showing off, but because, what is it that somebody wants? I can't say I am an Orthodox. I am not a monk. So I'm not going to say that. But I am a person who's trained in theology, has liturgical experience, etc., as a practicing Catholic. I understand that context. But at the end of the day, what people come to me who want a commission is because they've seen my work. And because they've seen it, they like it. So I think we don't want to be detrimental about other people's work. But at the same time, I think the challenge to each of us is to be honest about what we're producing. And say if your budget is only $200, you're never going to buy anything from me anyway. So look, there are these nuns, they produce these, this is how they do it, they're lovely, maybe you could support them. So turn it round the other way and actually say, if you're dealing with people who have a very limited budget, this is an opportunity for them to at least have an icon. In fact, I've got one here because as an iconographer, I can't really afford anybody else's work. So I'm in that category that I feel blessed to have had that. Likewise, if you've got printed icons, some people are very poo-pooey of this. And I think, yes, if it's in church, then people should be challenged that this is only a pro tem thing, and they shouldn't be tempted to get parishioners to paint them because, they're all painted with love, so they're all the same. All that nonsense. There are standards, there are equality, and love is important, prayer is vital, but so is technical ability and standards when it's in the public space. So we can put that into the discussion with people. So I hope that, Father, gives some idea of how I handle it. I don't know if that's of any use. Andrew, another question here. Generally, how would you approach discount when friends or close relatives request work from you and it is your only source of income? It's always a bit of a touchy subject. Exactly. Yes. And this gets even more complex when it's your parish priest who is looking for something for the church, or it's somebody who's a friend, and you could just do this for us, couldn't you? Likewise, so you get all that, and then you also get and I'm afraid priests are pretty bad at this. They're always on the cadge. I could get a bit of off there, or we could, would you just do this for us? What you got to do is to say to people very clearly, if I do this for you and I take half the money, I'm going to have to live on that money for X number of weeks. And I would then show, and I have done this actually. I said to somebody, how much do you live off a week? And this is actually a good way of gauging what somebody should pay you, because if you've got somebody who's a millionaire and they live off £250,000 a month, then I wouldn't have any hesitation in charging £10,000, £20,000, £30,000 for a reasonable icon. If I'm painting for a mission church in Thailand, for example, which I did some years ago, then I know what they live on, and I adjust my prices to reflect that, because you've got to be in solidarity with the church. And it's all right being in solidarity with the wealthy, and it's all right about being sympathetic with the poor, but when it really comes to solidarity, we can balk. And I think some of the times we have to accept a certain level of poverty for the work that we do. So this is a bit off the question Andrew asked, but it relates to it, and I think it's an important one. So I think when close relatives and friends ask for a discount, friends rates, then I think you've got to be honest with people and say, look, I can do it for this much, but I can't really do it less because it's going to cost me this for the board. If you provide all the materials, and if you decide you want to give it as a Christmas present, and it's, what you do there, like for example, I gave my mum an icon from a course that I'd done as a Christmas present this year. That was my Christmas present. You can balance it all up, but I think be transparent and honest with people. I think that's the number one thing, and I think one of the worst things that we get into is people get very secretive when it comes to money and what they're asking for and why. and that can lead to all sorts of real problems. And there's a lot of suspicion about what people earn, and if you're not open and transparent, people will just make it up, and that's unfortunate. And if you are making a lot of money, then God bless you. But if you're not, okay. But I think we have to have the courage to be upfront about what it costs and what we earn. Okay. Okay, no other questions at the moment. I think that covers... you're welcome, Andrew. That's great. I think that really covers most of what I was thinking to touch on. I would say, don't lose your sense of generosity. I think, it's very... I've seen this happen. People start getting really quite uptight about what they charge, and either feeling that they are being ripped off, or that people don't really appreciate their work, and you can get really quite down and grumpy, and that isn't the Holy Spirit. That isn't the joy of the Spirit. And because we are involved in a spiritual work, it does mean that we can be under spiritual attack. And the attack that the devil is not demons poking you in the middle of the night with a pitchfork. It's the way in which the evil one corrodes our sense of trusting God, our joy in our faith, and our joy in our work, and our love in our work. And it's very, very easy to get, really niggled by money. And it's so we have to really make sure we hold all of this in prayer. Try to develop a real sense of relying on divine providence, because that is what the Christian life asks all of us. So rely on divine providence. Hubert asks a really good question. Do you work on hourly rates when working prices? Well, that's a good question. Having said all of this, I'm really hopeless. It's quite embarrassing, really. I will sort of work out what I need to eat, to survive. I reckon I need about £1,500 a month income to be able to live. So I work out, I think this icon is going to take me 3 weeks. So I charge what I need to live off, not at a high standard, but at a basic standard. That's how I began when I first started doing commissions, and I haven't really changed since then, other than I've tended to keep the price at the same sort of level that I started then, but I do work faster. So in a way, I'm getting a better remuneration than at the beginning. Now, having said that, sometimes you can't evaluate it quite like that, and so I take as an hourly rate £30 an hour. So if I'm teaching, if I'm oh, thanks, Elena. Thank you for the affirmation. Thank you very much. So that's a ballpark figure, and I take that because I teach a course at the Royal West of England Academy in Bristol every year, and now it's gone up to £35 an hour. I keep my general rate at £30 an hour because it's easy to calculate, so my maths isn't so good. So that's why I take that rate. It's a standard rate for art teachers. So when I'm teaching, doing the tutorials, for example, that's what I work on. And if I'm doing commission work, like at the moment, I've got a commission to design a chapel, and it's at the first stages of that, and I'm trying to work out what I charge for the work that I've done so far. So I'm using that £30 an hour as a way of trying to assess it. I think that at the beginning, though, when you're starting out, the safest method to say, how much do I need to live off for a period of time that it's going to take you to do that icon, and that's roughly what you should be charging. That's how I started out, and it was all right. It worked out okay, and it's easy to explain to people. If they say, well, why are you charging this much? You can say, well, because this is my only income for the 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 weeks or 10 weeks that I'm going to spend doing this icon for you. So yeah, I'm not asking for my skill. I'm just asking so that I can feed my children. And then people go, oh yes, okay, yeah, we'll do that. So again, be transparent with people, be open with people, and they will understand, and that will also help them really appreciate the work that you put in, because otherwise, remember, I think one of the things that we do come up against is that we live in a society where things are instant. I go onto Amazon, I just bought some Long Johns, for example, and you expect them to be there by the end of the week. When people come and they want an icon, they expect you to be able to sort of have one on the shelf, really, and send it off. And you have to have quite a conversation with people. Say, well, actually, I've got a commission list, and it's going to be probably about this length of time until I'm able to start work on it. And then it's going to take me X number of weeks or months to do this particular commission. And then people go, But if you explain, then people sort of go on the journey with you, and they'll stay with you. And I think you have to also then build in the fact that in 18 months' time, if your commission list is that long, inflation, all that sort of thing, where you need to have put your prices up, I don't bother, but it would be a reasonable thing to think through as a professional. So yeah, that did good questions. Thank you very much. Okay, everybody. Well, I think that we've had a bit of a perambulation around the subject. I hope you found that interesting and helpful. And more to the point, I hope it opens up more conversations and more questions. And it's really wonderful to have some of you really interested in being professional iconographers. So, hopefully this will help you. Thank you, Ren. Lovely to hear from you. Oh, one more question. Yep. Okay, Father, go for it. Madalena, you're very welcome. Thank you. Okay, so if you have your style, yeah. Yes, Christine, I hope to have this posted once it's finished. Well, Father, to be honest with you, it depends. It depends on what they're asking for. I don't have a problem. I said, look, that's my style. That's what I can produce. If you want me to do this, I will do my best. Again, just be straight up with people. If it's more the subjects that I might have reservations about. So if somebody wanted me to paint an icon of Martin Luther King, I think I would turn that down. Or I'd be willing to do it in an iconographic style, but I wouldn't give it a halo, for example. I'd have a conversation with the commissioner. So I think there are some really good themes and topics and styles which different people have. And at the end of the day, I think I wouldn't take something on if I didn't think I could do a good job or a good enough job. So if you can do a style and you know you can do a good job of it, then do it. If you know you can't, then pass it to somebody who can. And I think that's one of the wonderful things of solidarity among all of us. If we're not competing with each other and trying to hold on to whatever we can get because we think, there may not be any more commissions, where's our faith? Where's our sense of divine providence? Where's our trust that God will provide? And if we've lost that, then we shouldn't be painting icons, really, because we've made it, with that shift in attitude, a worldly thing. And our art should be in the world, but of heaven. And so we need to keep that clarity of perspective. And this is a way in which I think we need to be quite sensitive. So I hope, Father, that answers something of that really good question, actually. And a comment from Rachel. Thanks, Father, and your blessing for us, for all of us here, would be really appreciated, and all the best for your time now in England. Hope it's all going well. Okay, everybody. Well, I'm going to go and have a cup of tea. Great to have your contributions, and I might do another one of these fairly soon on another related topic from questions that have come up from my students. So I'd like to wish all of you a really happy evening. And the blessings of the Christ child and this Christmas season be with you, be with all of us as we paint the face of the incarnated Christ. God bless everybody, and bye for now.